So thank you guys for joining me today. I'm going to be your tour guide. My name is Connie Davis. I'll be taking you through the iManage system for both HR and payroll. We'll definitely be showing the integration to attendance on demand. We're going to cover the topics from an HCM perspective of recruiting, onboarding, the full HR record, and then also we're going to look at some ACA reporting, talk about the integration to attendance on demand, and then also look at reporting and payroll. So with that, I'm going to log into iManage, and as I'm doing this, I want to talk to you about the iManage as a platform. It is a security-based, role-based platform. So depending on what your role is in the company, you're going to see certain employees, you're going to be able to do certain things. This is actually controlled through our settings, and when we actually do your implementation, you would have the ability to assign each employee a role that's going to access the system. So in the demo environment, we're going to be able to kind of go back and forth in between these roles so that you can see what each role could do as they log in. So this is our landing page. This actually is basically just a roll-up, a dashboard of some key performance indicators for your company, whether it's employee count to date. You can see the trend. You can look at, this could be terminations to date, new employees from a ACA perspective, where their hours trending. There's several options that you can actually choose from to display as an administrator here. I think it's important to look at where you are year to date with overtime hours. And this is a perspective that is just from what's been reported already. When you actually want to track through the pay period, you'll look at that in the attendance on demand side of the house and be able to actually track where that employee is in the pay period. If you're trying to control the overtime, this is really what's been paid and reported on. I can see a number of active employees. If I had multiple companies I'm looking at or multiple EINs, I can toggle back and forth and I'll see the employees assigned to that EIN or that company. So it gives you a lot of flexibility here to be able to see your information at a glance. So as an administrator, you're going to be doing multiple functions, and we're going to spend most of our time in this demo under the workforce. And so from a workforce perspective, you handle things every day like benefits. You have your company set up that we typically changes occasionally, but not necessarily where you'll spend a ton of time. But that's important if you have a GL code change, if there's somebody that you want to add in terms of positions, maybe there's a new position to be created, you can actually use that there. Workforce management, benefits, and team management are the three quadrants you're going to spend the most of your time with. And today I want to take you through just the soup to nuts presentation. So we're going to try to stick through how an employee how would you manage people wanting a job? How do you handle onboarding of that employee once you decide to hire them? And then once they're in the company, how that employee record looks. Then how do we track their time as they're working, if they're an hourly employee, as well as leave time? And then how do we progress to payroll? So from this perspective, we're gonna click on recruit, and we're gonna come back to some of those buckets as we progress through the applicant's day in the life, if you will. So our applicant center is designed to help you hire and recruit the best employees. So in this example, you're able to see I'm able to create a template for kitchen position, translator, so on and so forth. Depending on what you have going on at the moment, you create these positions and they're held in the system. And then as the applicant is progressing through the process, you can change this and then be able to report how many people do I have that are interviews in process, how many people do I have that are on hold. With this, you're able to post to multiple job boards. You're able to track those job boards as a total. So for example, instead of having to go to Indeed and Monster and other job boards independently and post these positions, you're going to choose the ones that are important to you. If I look at job board faves, there's some on here that will tell you they're going to suggest that you post to those. Some of them are free, some of them are cost money per year, but it's going to give you any local job board in your area that you could post to, and it's going to actually do all of that postings all at once. So you choose the actual boards you want to participate with, you post the job to our site, and then you're able to take that information, and once you hit submit, it will overnight it will post to all those job boards, and then you can track the applicant through the process. One thing I wanted to show is just what does the user see? So if I looked at jobs, if I click on jobs, applicants. If I clicked on applicants, it's going to show me from administration how many is in each phase. And from that perspective, it's nice to have if you're sending applications to different people and where they are and have to be approved, and then they go through a multi-step approval. When I look at the ability for us to help you recruit, there's also the ability to have a criteria. So you probably get 100 applications and you're not sure where to even start. Well, this system allows for you to take to set up certain questions, and those questions can be selected or actually can be answered, and then the system ranks their answers based on the most qualified person for that job. If I just clicked into branch manager real quick, it just tells you this is how I'm able to, how long I want to actually post this job for, what's the actual criteria, and so on and so forth. So the score is the actual score of the questions, and it lets you know where does that sit in the process. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the onboarding process. Now you've decided to hire Connie Davis, and you are now looking to onboard them. So what onboarding is in our world is basically taking all the new hire paperwork, whether it's you have to do E-Verify, which I'm not sure if the state you're in is an E-Verify state, but if it is, this process triggers the E-Verify process and then is able to report back to you the results of that E-Verify process. So whether they're good to go or not, you'll get that email back as part of the onboarding process. When I look at the actual onboarding questions, those are things like your I-9, your W-4, any company policies, anything that's specific that you need the employee to review prior to starting, and that can be approved by a manager. So this is the roll-up to show where's everybody in the process. If I have to have a manager approve this onboarding, and then I have to go to a second approval from an administrator standpoint, it tracks all of that, and this dashboard can be customized to your specific criteria. So if I wanted to see the questions that they're asked, it's basically a wizard. I can actually click on, I can actually drill down deeper into this and show you the filters, and I'm not going to do that in the interest of time today. So those specific things are considered approved, and then that onboarding paperwork is forwarded to inside the system to the administrator and then signed off on from the administrator. They review it, and they're able to make sure everything is accounted for. The employees certainly can upload their documents. They can take a picture and upload it from their PC if they're doing that. And then all the manager has to do is just verify the document. So the cool part of the onboarding process is what you're normally doing as an administrator is entering that information into your HR system. The onboarding process replaces that and puts the onus on the employee to enter all of their information, account for all of that, which then becomes the employee record. So as I'm progressing through the process, I'm really taking some of the work as the employee off of the administration. And now instead of actually entering every single applicant, or excuse me, every single employee, they're doing that for you, and you're just verifying and managing any exceptions to that paperwork. Plus on day one, they come in and they're not able to they don't have to spend a whole day filling out paperwork. They're able to hit the ground running. And I do want to mention, as soon as that onboarding paperwork is approved, it's going to, that data is flowing over to Attendance on Demand, and all of that information is seamlessly entered in both systems, or in both modules, I should say. So when I look at the employee record, now that it's created, if I go to the personnel file here, all the fields that in the documents that I just entered, if I'm an employee, is getting uploaded in this area. So just to give you a little bit of the demographic for this this frame, and this works throughout the entire system, is you can search by employee number, you can scroll, there's 63 employees in this database, or you could just type in any one of these criteria, the last name, first name, or person code, even their social security number, and you'll find the employee that you're looking for. I'm going to go with Rizzo Austin today, and when I click on his information, I believe that it's, let me click through here for a second. Actually, Rizzo is the active employee here. So because he's the first in the list, he's displaying here. If I click on Leslie, this view changes. So this is the PDF version they uploaded of their I-9 paper version. You don't have to do that. The system automatically records that, but some companies like to have those additional documents. From an HR perspective, if there's anything I need, let's just say licensing or any type of safety records, you would put it here. And this little plus sign just initiates the box, and then you tell it, anytime you see this little file folder here, it just means something can be attached to it and stored within the employee record. So all of this can be uploaded. If you need verification on certain information like taxes or a change in different statuses for employees, you can attach any of that to the employee record. So going back to, oops, it's making me save it because I made a change. So I will save it. And then I will go back to looking at the personal. So now I'm looking at the personnel files for all my employees, and now I'm looking at one record. So Rizzo Austin, of course, first in the list. His information is popping up here. As a matter of fact, most of this is actually entered once the employee is onboarded. So once the employee is onboarded, they're filling out the majority of this, with the exception of things like pay rate, job class, anything that is specific to an HR category is more likely to be actually entered by the HR department. This is right here, this is our date sensitive navigator. And what this is it tracks the employee changes. So if I scroll back and I go back to 1 of 2, basically I can, as there are changes within the system, you're going to be able to track those and be able to just scroll through and see what has happened over that period of time. As it relates to effective dating, if you have performance reviews, if you have pay rate changes that's coming up in the future, benefits that are, you already know the premium changes, you can effective date all of that within iManage to push that on the date that you're looking for in the future. You don't have to wait. That's a strong piece of iManage, is to be able to effective date it and not have to remember, oh, that person gets bonuses once a year and I have to remember to wait until the week before the pay period that is active before I can enter the bonus. You can effective date that within the iManage application. So any questions so far?
I do not have any. Looks great so far.
Okay, well, very good. So a couple more things on the HR record. We also, so if you look at tax documents, the W-2 here, the employee will have access to this, and I'll show you the employee side here in just a second. But you can report on, you can reprint as an administrator any employee's W-2, their tax records you would have, or excuse me, their pay stubs. So if you have an organization that's not necessarily as comfortable doing things on their own, the administration has the ability to reprint pay stubs, equipment. If you're tracking equipment, I know a lot of the customers we deal with have cell phones or company cars or maybe there's a piece of equipment that you assign to a technician or someone that's maybe working out in the field, you can track that and you just click on add, and actually when the employee terms, you can get that employee, you can actually have a record of what the employee has so that you know what to get back from that particular employee. So when I look at banking information, the most important thing there is that the employee does have the ability to make banking changes as needed. Whenever I think about employee self-service, I like to, sometimes move money from my paycheck to a different account. This distribution right here is definitely going to control where that money goes, and you can have an unlimited number of distributions. When I think about, checking and savings and all of those things, I, as an employee, do have the ability to request changes for that, or this is where it's stored when I'm onboarded. I'm basically filling out this, just like I said earlier. If they don't have it, the administration can always upload it later. But this is a good piece for the employee to take some pressure off that administration. Again, effective dating, I might have changed, every time I change something in my employee record from a banking perspective, it's tracked, and you can definitely tell what was the reason and when the date was that actually changed. So looking at just the other things that are available skills. So if you have a forklift driver, CPR, an employee that has to have CPR, or they have to have a certificate like an LPN, or potentially something that needs to be on file. And again, the goal here is to do away with all the paper. So you can actually click on this, and again, it will allow you to create not only their license and their certificate, but you can upload the document that's according to whatever's required. So we want to get rid of the paper. It's all stored in iManage. Most people are utilizing this functionality for a lot of the certifications that might be necessary and or skills that attach to employees, and have the ability just to reference, especially, from an education perspective. If you have a criteria that an employee has to have a certain level of education to be qualified for a position, you would store all of that here. Moving forward, I will continue to go through the employee record just quickly. I do want to talk about safety. So a lot of our clients have, this is not popular for most HR systems to have a safety module, but we're able to create the OSHA 300, the 301A reporting, because we're tracking these incidents. So if I have, let's just say I have an employee that, is hurt on the job, I'm going to track all of the factors from a safety perspective of what happened, who are the people involved, so I can actually quickly get to that once it's being investigated. If it was a vehicle, I can actually put everything I need to know from a vehicle perspective, and I can actually add multiple records here if there were multiple vehicles there. And then also the passenger information. So everything that's needed to do the investigation from a safety perspective, and anything that is needed from a OSHA 300, 300A reporting is going to be captured here. So it's important because a lot of companies are doing this manually, and we have the report. I'll show you the report just real quick of what it looks like, so you can tie that together. I will run this just really quick. So you can see it's actually the form that is required by the federal government. Here's where you would rehire somebody. So from a safety perspective, that wraps that up. But looking at just the things we haven't talked about, rehiring, performance. So when I look at performance, you're obviously going to be tracking employees and what they, how they are performing, tying that to a pay raise, potentially based on a weighted scale. A lot of our clients are, we have kind of a mixed bag. Some of our clients want to create their own and actually upload their own performance template. Totally fine. We can do that. We can add that to this record. But what this really is the performance module is really to tie that performance evaluation to a future dated increase. or potentially decrease depending on what the actual score of or the actual raise increase should be. And maybe it shouldn't be anything. But this attaches to the employee record. I create a review. It's not a full-fledged review, meaning that it's not going to give you different categories because every one of our clients have a different template. It's very hard to capture the standards that are needed for every industry. But if you have a form and you fill it out, you can certainly add that here and then tie that to a performance rating and increase in the future. You can actually add your categories here depending on if you want to just rate them quickly and not fill out a formal review. You can use iManage for that as well. Okay. Any questions so far?
I do. I see the discipline button over there. Tell me about that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, let me go back a minute. Sorry about that. I was gonna move on to benefits, but thank you for catching that. So discipline is really in iManage. Discipline is handled for each employee. So as if I click on Rizzo and I want to add a new incident, this is not necessarily to track points in incidents. So every time I have an infraction, for example, in the time and attendance world, you may get a point, which then equates to a termination of a certain number of a point. In this situation, this is just to say, hey, I'm going to do your evaluation in 6 months. I want to add that. I want to add the incident that maybe you had an altercation with another employee, or you had a customer complaint, or you had just any negative and or positive incidents that you have. The discipline module tracks that, so it actually rolls into the performance module. So whenever you're able to go back and actually have a history of what that employee's done, good or bad, you can use this module to determine what their rating is. So a lot of times people confuse it with the points and incidents, but it's really designed to be more of a record of throughout the year as the employee is progressing towards their performance review. Thank you, Rhonda, for that. I apologize. I almost skipped right over that. I made a change, so now it's asking me to. I don't know why I don't look at indicators. I just tend to just move on, and I keep doing the same thing over and over again. It drives me a little nuts. But anyway, so moving on. All right, so let's talk about, before we jump too far to end, core benefits. So from a benefit selections and benefit setting up benefit plans, iManage has the ability to set up all of your plans. We had one client have 31 different plans and a lot of options. So there's an unlimited amount of plans you can have currently going. We set up the employee amount, the employer amount if there's a contribution. So like in a 401k example, we would actually set that up, and then the record is attached to whatever they selected upon hire, either when they were onboarding or if you have a waiting period. That amount of money is then applied to that person's employee record. So when we run payroll, it knows exactly what to deduct based on what their selections were. It's stored here. Employees have access to make a change with the life event during open enrollment. We handle the open enrollment for you, so that we basically open up this so employees can, if you want them to, log in and be able to request those changes, whether it's regular open enrollment or if it's a life event, a death, a marriage, a birth, whatever the case is. This is where you would do that from a life event perspective, and then open enrollment. So depending on which benefit has the open enrollment, iManage can handle that for you, and you can allow your employees to elect whatever change they want to make. So if they've declined coverage, you're just going to note that so that there's no deduction on their payroll. If they have made a change or added, it'll be reflected here. And again, you can upload documents. There's actually election options that the employee has. We would set those up. Not every plan has that, so it's just if it does, If there's questions such as, are you a smoker, are you not a smoker, depending on the criteria for the plan that needs to be tracked, if we need to track that, we can. Let's see. So from a total calculation end-to-end solution, the employee ideally would they would have their onboarding process, then they would normally, it's about 30 days, they get to review their benefits, and then the administrator would come back and actually elect those benefits. The plans are already set up. The calculations are already applying so that when they run their the payroll that will include that deduction, you will have the correct amount deducted from the employee. And again, this is where you would set up the plan, the rate associated with it. We will train you to show you how to set those up. You will have a dedicated payroll specialist that will help you with not only your regular payroll run, but also anything such as open enrollment, new plans or changes. So that kind of covers the benefit piece of it. When you look at garnishments, we handle the garnishments in a way that we pay the agency, we do the deduction, we can communicate on your behalf to get the garnishment documentation. You can do that, but if I click on it, then I can actually, when I dig down here, it'll tell me what type of garnishment it is, and then also how much money. This is the court ordered. We have the case number. And from a legal perspective, we have all that detail in to show that they are supposed to be paying that, and it would be garnished from their payroll. So PTO and vacation is one of those areas that have options. So when I look at the employee has the option to track their PTO, or excuse me, you deduct PTO and vacation on the time and attendance side, or they can do it within iManage. So if most of your employees are salaried and not using attendance on demand for that, they can use iManage, and then your hourly employee could use the time and attendance to request the time off. You can have both options available, or you could have one or the other. The accrual of the vacation and PTO and any other leave plans is typically held within the iManage application, and then the deductions flow through from attendance on demand into iManage every payroll, and then that balance is updated, and that new balance would be sent to attendance on demand, and you could be able to see, the employee will be able to see their new updated balance. ACA, this is a huge topic. We do all of your ACA reporting. We track the coverage. We track the affordability of the plan for the employee from a regulation and compliance standpoint. This is basically the data that's coming across from the time and attendance, not only the hours that's worked, but what is their rate, and also what period are we in? Are we in the stability period, administration period? If you're in a look-back situation, it would show that. The best way for me to show you the power of ACA within, here we go, ACA eligibility. So when it comes time to offer your employee benefits, you're going to be able to literally type in, and I may not have any data here, I'll have to see what it is. Type in the plan year, the actual measurement period, and determine what employees are eligible for benefits. So let me just see if I can get some data here. If not, you can see the categories. It gives you not only the entity code, the person code, the date of birth, how many full-time hours equivalents they actually accrued, how many hours, what's the average, and then how much did it pay. You can dump this into Excel, and you can also manipulate it that way, but it gives you all of the information from the time and attendance system, the average hours, and what that equated to be able to report to know who you have to offer coverage to. Another one would be the ACA percentage report. This report, there's federally, there is a percentage that you cannot exceed, and I think it's 6 something this year for 2019, but it basically lets you know that the coverage is affordable, and if anybody's outside of that government regulation of, I think it's 6 something, I can't remember the actual percentage, but quickly you can see that the employees the plans that you are offering to your employees are affordable because it falls below that threshold. This is actually the 2019 year, so we don't have the rest, but if I switch this to 2018, it would show the full year. So it keeps you in compliance with that your plans are affordable, the healthcare you're offering is in compliance with the ACA regulations. Last one is the coverage, ACA coverage report. I'm clicking on that because it is very important. So when you look at the 1095, there's 2 columns that are really important on that 1095 report, and this gives it to you every month of the year to let you know it's one equivalent. And then, of course, you see most of the line 16. So line 14 and line 16 are the primary reported fields on the 1095, and you can run this any time of the year to get exactly what that month looks like. So if you're out of balance, if you're out of line, you can get it quickly back into compliance. While we're on reporting, before I go to the employee, I just wanted to show you the benefit census. So a lot of times clients want to see, what are my employees paying? How much is it costing? What are they enrolled in? And this benefit census is a beautiful report because it gives you lots of information that you may need from whatever plan that they are involved in or that they're enrolled in. It tells you exactly how much they're paying, what they're enrolled in. Actually, this one doesn't show the actual dollar amount, but the master plan does. But this gives you an idea of what's my percentage of enrollment in all of my benefit plans. So that's a really cool report. I like this report because a lot of clients say that some of our competitors don't offer that, and they have to calculate that manually, especially the employer contribution part of it when you look at the actual benefit plans themselves. So I'm going to just switch to wrap up the day in the life. So now you're looking at let me go back. I want to show one thing before we move on to payroll. So let me show you, this is the employee. So if I log in from an employee self-service perspective, I can do, this is the payroll and HR side. I can do a lot of things. I can change my banking if my company allows me to. There's 3 options when it comes to making changes from an employee perspective. Those are, 1, I am looking to just view my information, and sometimes companies start small. I'm looking to allow them to change their personal but not their banking. They can change it, and it can either write directly to the database and you're comfortable with that, or it would workflow to the supervisor for an approval. So I would probably guess that 95% of our clients have that workflow in place because they want to make sure if it's banking, it's got a correct routing number. It just saves time on the back end. Same thing with life events, and that is all routed to a supervisor for approval before the change is actually updated to the database. As an employee, I can also look at my W-2 and run that from last year. So a lot of times people are buying houses or they're looking for future information. And so, or looking into the year, and they have to call HR to get their W-2 or their last pay stub. And that's not the case here. You can, if I clicked on this, it'll bring up the ability for me to run my actual 2018 W-2. And if I launch this, which I'm not going to, it's definitely going to pull up what I'm looking for. So if I need to see my pay stub, which is the most critical thing for most employees, I want to see, let's just say I get paid on Friday, and I want to see what my pay is for, and it's Thursday. I want to see what my pay stub is being put in the bank. I can actually see that if my employer allows, I can see what my pay stub looks like prior to it hitting my bank account. So this is the pay stub. If you click on any of these from a historic standpoint, I can print this straight from my computer. If I wanted to print it, I need a physical copy of it. I can see my payment information, benefits, all my deductions are laid out, as well as all of my earnings codes. along with any leave information. And apparently this employee did not take any leave this payroll, so there is nothing to show. I know that there is some need to have some different things on the pay stub, and those are evaluated on an as-needed basis. So if I'm an hourly employee and I want to be able to clock in, this is what your attendance on demand system is going to allow you to either punch, transfer, request a day off. If you're currently already using attendance on demand, from an employee perspective, whatever you see today will be right here in the same location when the employee logs into iManage. We use a single sign-on capability, so there's nothing going to change if you're already using attendance on demand. It will just be displayed here. Kind of looking a few other things. I can look at whatever skills I have. I can track my own property. I can initiate my open enrollment from here. I can see all of my leave information, and what's in terms of this could be hours instead of allocated tips. This could be hours of regular pay and PTO. So there's some customizable options here. So on that, before I move on, I did want to show just the integration real quick to the time and attendance from a manager's perspective. So if you have attendance on demand today and you're using a dashboard and you're a manager and you're approving your employee's time, so now not only would you have the ability to do that, but you would also have the ability to see your payroll and HR information for your employees. Whatever you have today, again, will be right here in this section. So if I'm, approving time, fixing time cards, managing schedules, all of that's going to be right here for you all in one place. So that said, I am going to move on to payroll. And we're just going to talk through what payroll looks like because it is different for everyone. But it really comes down to 6 very easy steps. And once your time is approved in attendance on demand, you're going to basically open a payroll. You're going to set these parameters here for what pay week is it, what's your frequency. You can have multiple frequencies. We have lots of clients with multiple frequencies. You also have the check date that corresponds with that payroll. And you're going to basically, to open payroll, just begin a regular payroll. Everything outside of regular payroll, whether it's just a one-off check, whether it's a correction to checks that are already, maybe there was a bonus missed or time was not accounted for, that's going to fall under a supplemental payroll for this particular payroll. So if it's not a brand new payroll, it's going to be a supplemental payroll. So this would be like the main, and this one would be any corrections or manual checks that need to be cut. So I'm going to export the time out of attendance on demand. My export file is going to be already formatted to iManage. And then I'm going to browse. When I import the time, I'm going to browse to that file, pick it up for my hourlies or salaries, depending on who you have in the actual file. The timesheets are really going to be that's just the review of the time that's coming into iManage to make sure you've accounted for everything before you calculate the payroll. And the calculation piece of it is it's a gross to net calculation, and it's going to give you what you will see as the employee. All their deductions will be applied, any 401k adjustments, all that's applied to that employee's pay, or all employees' pay. And then we're going to move on to report. So before you sign off on anything, which is really closing the payroll, you're able to see a payroll summary. You're able to see the pre-check before you sign off. You're going to go through and make sure everything like you normally would do is correct and you're ready to go. From that standpoint, you're going to close payroll. And once you close payroll, iManage picks up, does your your direct deposit, prints any checks. Those checks will arrive overnight based on the day that your payroll is to be paid. And then we're going to send all those reports that correspond with payroll to your payroll department, whomever is responsible. Again, you're working with the same person every single payroll. So there's no 800 number, there's no call center, and we have the ability to adjust anything that needs to be adjusted on the back side. Any questions?
No, it sounds really good. I actually enjoyed the demonstration. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you, and we'll be in touch.
All right, thank you.